They compelled the humanity to leave. We warned them. The consequences are here. The stars had never looked so threatening. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Endeavour, watching as massive alien vessels dropped out of hyperspace around Earth's solar system. Each ship was the size of a small moon, their hulls gleaming with materials that human science could not identify. The alien fleet numbered in the hundreds, forming a perfect sphere around the sun. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Park from the communications station. His voice shook despite his training. Sarah nodded grimly. 3 days ago, the same thing had happened at New Terra, humanity's largest colony world. The aliens had appeared without warning, destroyed the orbital defense platforms in seconds, and demanded to speak with Earth's leadership. Similar reports had come from 17 other human colonies scattered across 40 light-years of space. The message that came through the speakers was not spoken in any human language, yet somehow every person who heard it understood perfectly. The words formed directly in their minds, cold and absolute. "We are the Galactic Consortium. We represent 12 species who have maintained order in this galaxy for 50,000 of your years. You humans have expanded too quickly. You build too many ships. You ask too many questions. You threaten the peace we have protected." On the main screen, the image of the alien spokesperson appeared. It was a creature made of living crystal, its body shifting between different geometric shapes as it spoke. Behind it stood representatives of the other consortium species, beings of pure energy, creatures with too many arms and eyes, entities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "I am Vorthak Prime of the Crystal Collective. We speak for all consortium members. Humanity has become a problem that must be solved." Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. Around the bridge, her crew watched in stunned silence as humanity's fate was decided by aliens they had never known existed. "You will abandon all territory beyond your birth system," Vorthak Prime continued. "You have 1 standard galactic year to complete this evacuation. All human colonies, mining operations, research stations, and military installations beyond the system you call Sol must be emptied. You will return to your single world and remain there." The crystal being's form shifted, becoming sharper and more threatening. "If you refuse, if even one human remains outside your birth system after the deadline, we will destroy your entire species. We have done this before to other young races who refused to accept their limits." The transmission continued with a demonstration of power that left Sarah's blood cold. The alien fleet moved with impossible precision, their weapons systems charging, up in perfect synchronization. A single beam of energy lanced out toward an abandoned human cargo ship that had been drifting near Mars for months. The ship didn't just explode, it simply ceased to exist, erased so completely that not even debris remained. "Your weapons cannot harm us," Vorthak Prime stated with mechanical certainty. "Your shields cannot stop us. Your ships cannot outrun us. We have observed your technology for decades. You are children playing with toys while we wield the power of stars." As if to prove the point, the alien ships began moving through Earth's defensive formations like ghosts. Human weapons fired, desperately, but every shot passed through the alien vessels without effect. The aliens weren't even bothering to dodge. They simply existed in a state where human weapons could not touch them. But then something unexpected happened. A new voice cut through the transmission, speaking in the same mind-to-mind communication method, but with a different feeling, older, sadder, and filled with warning. "Vorthak Prime, you make a grave mistake." The crystal being's form twisted with what might have been surprise. On the screen, another alien moved into view. This one was different from the others, smaller, more humanoid in shape, with skin that seemed to be made of star-filled space and eyes like distant galaxies. "Kethvar of the Wanderers," Vorthak Prime said, and there was clear annoyance in the mental voice. Your people gave up their right to speak in consortium matters long ago. The star-skinned alien called Kethvar moved closer to the transmission device. When he spoke, his words were directed not at the consortium, but at the humans listening. I am Kethvar, last speaker of the Wanderer species. We were the first race to achieve faster-than-light travel in this galaxy. We have watched civilizations rise and fall for 200,000 years. I speak now to the humans, not to the consortium that cast my people out. Sarah found herself leaning forward, sensing that something crucial was about to be said. Humans of Earth, you do not understand what you are unleashing. Your species burns with a fire that is different from all others in this galaxy. The consortium fears this fire, but they do not truly understand it. They believe they can smother it by forcing you back to your birth world. Vorthak Prime's crystal form pulsed with angry light. Silence, Wanderer. Your species' time is over. But Kethvar continued speaking, his galactic eyes fixed on the human transmission receivers. They are wrong. Fire cannot be smothered. It can only be contained for a time, growing hotter and more dangerous in confinement. When that fire finally breaks free, it will consume everything. What are you trying to tell us? Sarah found herself speaking aloud, not sure if the alien could even hear her. Kethavar's expression grew sad. I am trying to tell you that this moment will be remembered as the day the galaxy changed forever. The consortium thinks they are solving a problem. Instead, they are creating their own destruction. The other consortium members began making sounds of anger and dismissal. Vorthak Prime's crystal body blazed with threatening light. Enough! Wanderer, remove yourself from this transmission. Humans, you have heard our ultimatum. 1 galactic year. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah's bridge in stunned silence. For long minutes, nobody spoke. Finally, Lieutenant Park cleared his throat. Commander, we're receiving priority messages from Earth Command, Luna Base, and Mars Central. They want immediate reports on the alien contact. Sarah nodded, but her mind was still focused on the warning from Kethvar. The old alien had seemed genuinely frightened, not of humanity, but for what humanity might become if pushed too far. Send. The reports, she ordered. Include everything. Full audio and visual records of the transmission. As her crew worked to compile the data, Sarah stared out at the alien fleet surrounding their solar system. Each ship was a monument to technological superiority that humanity could not hope to match. The smart thing would be to comply with the ultimatum. Pack up the colonies, bring everyone home to Earth, and accept their place as a single-world species, under alien supervision. But Sarah had heard the fear in Kethvar's voice. The old alien knew something about humans that even humans themselves might not understand yet. Over the next few hours, similar reports came in from across human space. Every colony, every outpost, every human presence beyond Earth's solar system had received the same ultimatum. The consortium fleet was vast beyond imagination, positioned at every human world simultaneously. Humanity had 1 year to choose between exile and extinction. What the consortium did not know was that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The fire Kethvar had spoken of was already beginning to burn. They compelled the humanity to leave. We warned them. The consequences are here. The evacuation of New Terra began 6 months after the ultimatum. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from the observation deck of the transport ship homeward as the last shuttles lifted off from the colony world where she had spent 15 years of her life. Below, the empty cities stretched toward the horizon like abandoned dreams. Parks where her children had played, laboratories where she had made breakthrough discoveries. In xenobiology, homes where families had built their futures, all left behind. Around her, other passengers wept openly. The evacuation fleet was massive, hundreds of ships carrying millions of colonists back to an Earth that was already struggling to house them all. Every ship was packed beyond safe capacity, but there was no choice. The consortium had made it. Clear that any human found outside Sol's system after the deadline would mean the destruction of the entire species. But Elena wasn't really watching the evacuation. She was studying the alien observers. 3 consortium ships hung in New Terra's orbit, their crystalline hulls reflecting the planet's blue-green surface. They had been there for months, watching, recording, making sure humanity complied with the ultimatum. Their presence was a constant reminder of humanity's defeat, or so they thought. "Dr. Vasquez, we're ready for you in Laboratory 7, came a voice over the ship's communication system. Elena made her way through the crowded corridors, past families clutching their few allowed possessions, past soldiers who tried to hide their shame at being forced to retreat without a fight. The ship homeward was like thousands of others in the evacuation fleet. Publicly, it was carrying refugees back to Earth. Privately, it housed one of humanity's most secret projects. Laboratory 7 was hidden deep in the ship's cargo section, disguised as a waste processing unit. Inside, a small team of scientists worked on technology that could change everything. At the center of the lab was their prize, a captured consortium scout ship that had been disabled during the first contact at Proxima Station. "What have you found?" Elena asked Dr. James Chen, the project's lead engineer. James looked up from a complex device that hummed with alien energy. His face was gaunt from months of working 18-hour days, but his eyes burned with determination. "We've cracked their phase shift technology," he said quietly. "The reason our weapons can't touch them isn't because of shields. They're literally existing in multiple dimensions at once. When we fire at them, we're only hitting the shadow they cast. In our dimension." Elena felt her heart race. "Can we replicate it?" "Better. We can improve it." James gestured to a series of human volunteers lying in medical pods around the lab. "The alien technology is based on mechanical manipulation of quantum fields. But humans have something the aliens don't. We can interface directly with quantum consciousness." Elena stared at the volunteers. Each one was a military specialist who had volunteered for the most dangerous experiment in human history. They were being slowly transformed, their nervous systems enhanced with alien biotechnology, combined with human innovations. "The risks?" she asked. "High, maybe 50% survival rate, but the ones who survive—" James paused, checking his notes. "They won't just be human anymore. They'll be something the galaxy has never seen." Across the ship, in another hidden section, Admiral Lisa Chen, James's sister, was coordinating a different kind of project. The official evacuation reports showed millions of humans leaving the colonies and returning to Earth. What they didn't show was that only the civilians were actually going home. Every military unit, every scientist working on advanced technology, every engineer who understood alien systems, they were disappearing into the dark spaces between stars. Asteroid belts that had been strip-mined for resources now hid massive construction projects. Rogue planets drifting in interstellar space became the sites of new human bases. The ice moons of gas giants far from any sun-housed research facilities that worked around the clock. "Admiral, we've completed the first batch of shadow ships," reported Captain Maria Santos, one of Admiral Chen's most trusted officers. Lisa looked at the holographic display showing their latest creation. The ships looked almost organic, their hulls a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. They were built using a combination of salvaged alien technology and human innovations that the consortium had never imagined. "How many are operational?" Lisa asked. 50, with 200 more under construction. Each ship is equipped with the new phase drive system and quantum consciousness interfaces. They can exist in normal space, phase space, and what the scientists are calling angry space, a dimension where thought becomes reality. Lisa nodded grimly. The name angry space had come from the test pilots. The new dimension could only be accessed by humans in a state of focused rage or determination. It was dangerous, potentially deadly, but it gave human ships capabilities that defied every known law of physics. Meanwhile, on Earth, the public saw only the tragedy of defeat. News broadcasts showed the endless streams of evacuation ships arriving at Earth's orbital stations. Politicians made speeches about the need to accept humanity's place in the galactic community. Scientists appeared on talk shows explaining why resistance against the consortium was impossible. It was all theater, designed to convince the consortium that humanity had accepted defeat. But in the hidden facilities, the real work continued. Elena's biological research had made breakthrough after breakthrough. By studying captured alien technology, she had learned that most consortium species were actually artificial creations, biological machines designed by their original creators to serve specific functions. The crystalline Vorthak were living computers. The energy beings were sentient power sources. Even the most advanced species were ultimately tools created by long-dead civilizations. But humans were different. Humans were natural, evolved, chaotic. Their biology was unpredictable. Their consciousness was quantum-linked, and their imagination could literally reshape reality when properly focused. We're not just copying their technology, Elena explained to the research team during one of their secret meetings. We're showing it what real evolution looks like. The volunteers for the enhancement program were changing in ways that amazed and terrified the scientists. Subject 12 had developed the ability to phase in and out of existence at will. Subject 27 could interface directly with alien computers by touch. Subject 31 could survive in the vacuum of space and move faster than light, without a ship. But the most dramatic changes were mental. The enhanced humans retained their personalities, but their thinking became faster, deeper, more connected to the quantum foundation of reality. They began to understand alien technology, not by studying it, but by simply knowing how it worked. We're creating weapons, James said during one late-night discussion with Elena. Living weapons that think and feel and choose their targets. Elena nodded sadly. The consortium forced this choice on us. They wanted us to remain weak and contained. Instead, they've pushed us to become something stronger than they could imagine. As the evacuation deadline approached, the consortium congratulated themselves on solving the human problem. Their observers reported complete compliance with the ultimatum. Human colonies were empty, human ships were heading back to Earth, and human military forces appeared to be surrendering without resistance. Vorthak Prime transmitted regular reports to the Consortium Council, describing the successful containment of humanity. The crystal being was proud of the efficient solution to what could have been a messy war. Only Kethvar, drifting alone in his ancient wanderer ship at the edge of Consortium space, knew the truth. His people's enhanced senses could detect the quantum disturbances that human activities were creating in the hidden dimensions. The signatures were unlike anything he had ever encountered in 200,000 years of existence. "You fools," he whispered to the empty space around him. "You haven't defeated them. You've given them time to become something that will make you wish you had never been created." But Kethvar's warnings to the consortium had been ignored long ago. His people were considered relics of a bygone age, their concerns dismissed as the fears of a dying species. The consortium would learn too late that the oldest species in the galaxy sometimes knew things that the younger ones had forgotten. Time was running out, and humanity was no longer the species that had received the ultimatum. They were becoming something else entirely. They compelled the humanity to leave. We warned them. The consequences are here. The first consortium patrol to disappear was the Eternal Harmony, a crystalline cruiser monitoring the empty ruins of New Terra. Vorthak Secondary was conducting routine scans of the abandoned human colony when the sensors detected something impossible. For just a moment, there had been a massive energy signature. Not in normal space, but in the quantum dimensions that only consortium technology could access. Investigation required. Vorthak Secondary transmitted to the Fleet Command. Anomalous. Readings detected at coordinates. The transmission cut off. When consortium reinforcements arrived 3 days later, they found nothing. No debris, no energy traces, no indication that the Eternal Harmony had ever existed. The ship and its crew of 200 had simply vanished. System malfunction, Vorthak Prime declared when the report reached consortium headquarters. Ancient. Ships sometimes fail. Replace the patrol vessel and continue monitoring. But 2 weeks later, another ship vanished. Then another. Captain Maria Santos stood in the observation deck of the shadow ship Retribution, watching as her team prepared for their next mission. Around her, the enhanced humans moved with fluid grace that was only partially human. Their eyes held depths that reflected the quantum dimensions they could now access at will. Target confirmed, reported Lieutenant Jackson, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before his enhancement. Consortium Command Vessel Supreme Order, Crystal-class crew of 5,000, currently positioned at former human colony of Kepler 442b. Maria nodded. The Supreme Order was one of the most advanced ships in the consortium fleet, equipped with sensors that could detect human technology across multiple dimensions. It would be their most dangerous target yet. Remember the mission parameters, Maria addressed her team. We don't want to destroy them. We want to deliver a message. The Retribution phased out of normal space, entering the dimension the scientists had labeled angry space. Here, reality bent to human will and emotion. The ship moved faster than thought, crossing dozens of light years in seconds. When they emerged near Kepler 442b, the consortium command ship was waiting. Human vessel detected, came the transmission from Supreme Order. You are in violation of Galactic Consortium law. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Maria smiled. The aliens still didn't understand what they were dealing with. All hands, prepare for boarding action, she commanded. What happened next would be talked about in whispers across consortium space for years to come. The enhanced humans didn't use transport beams or docking tubes. They simply stepped through the quantum barrier between the ships, materializing directly on the bridge of the Supreme Order. The consortium's phase-shift defenses, which had made them invulnerable to human weapons, were useless against beings who could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The crystal beings of the ship's crew tried to activate their weapons, but found their systems unresponsive. The enhanced humans weren't just soldiers. They were living viruses that could infect any quantum-based technology by touch. I am Captain Maria Santos of the Human Defense Force, Maria announced as she materialized directly in front of Vorthak Commander, the ship's captain. We need to talk. The crystal being pulsed with patterns of fear and confusion. Around the Say, bridge, other consortium species, energy beings, multidimensional entities, organic computers, all found themselves frozen as human consciousness invaded their systems. Impossible. Vorthak Commander managed to transmit. Humans are contained. Humans are defeated. Maria's expression grew cold. You forced us to leave our homes. You threatened to destroy our entire species if we didn't obey your ultimatum. Did you think we would just accept that? She gestured, and her team spread out across the bridge. Each enhanced human took position next to a critical system, their mere presence causing the alien technology to malfunction in ways that defied understanding. We tried to coexist peacefully, Maria continued. We expanded slowly, carefully, trying not to disturb the established galactic order. But you couldn't tolerate even that. You demanded that we cage ourselves on one world like animals. Vorthak Commander's crystal form flickered as his quantum processors struggled to comprehend what was happening. Your species is young, dangerous. The order of the galaxy, Maria interrupted, is about to change. She touched the ship's main communication array, and her consciousness flowed through the quantum networks that connected all consortium vessels. For a brief moment, every ship, every station, every alien outpost received the same message simultaneously. This is humanity. You gave us an ultimatum. You forced us from our homes. You threatened us with extinction if we didn't obey. We want you to know that we heard your message and we understand what you tried to do to us. The transmission continued, carried by Maria's enhanced consciousness directly into the quantum substrate that alien technology depended on. Every consortium citizen, from the lowest maintenance drone to the highest council members, heard the words forming in their minds. But you misunderstood something fundamental about our species. Humans don't break when you push us too far. We adapt. We evolve. We become something you never expected us to become. Throughout consortium space, alien sensors began detecting impossible readings. Human signatures were appearing everywhere, in dimensions that shouldn't exist, in spaces that had been empty moments before, in systems that were supposedly secure. "We are offering you the same choice you offered us," Maria's voice continued. "Withdraw from all contested systems. Return to your core worlds. Accept the limits we set for you. You have one standard galactic year to comply." The transmission ended with a demonstration that left the entire consortium fleet paralyzed with terror. Every human ship, every human facility, every enhanced human soldier across the galaxy phase-shifted into normal space simultaneously. For one terrifying moment, the consortium could see the true scope of what humanity had become. The evacuation had been a lie. Humans hadn't retreated to Earth. They had scattered across the galaxy, building hidden bases in places no alien species had thought to look. They had turned asteroids into weapons platforms, rogue planets into factory worlds, and the empty space between stars into highways for their new technology. Worse, they had done something the consortium had thought impossible. They had improved on alien technology by combining it with human creativity and quantum consciousness. The result was ships that could exist in multiple dimensions, weapons that could kill ideas themselves, and soldiers who could walk through solid matter and survive in the vacuum of space. "If you refuse," Maria's final words echoed across the galaxy, "if even one consortium vessel remains in contested space after the deadline, we will demonstrate what happens when you push humanity beyond its limits." The demonstration lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Human ships appeared inside consortium facilities, moving through their defenses like ghosts. Human soldiers materialized on heavily guarded stations, walking past security systems that couldn't detect beings who existed. Partially outside normal space, but they didn't attack. They simply stood there, silent and threatening, before vanishing again into dimensions the consortium couldn't access. The message was clear. "We can reach you anywhere. We can strike any time. You are no longer safe." In the aftermath of the revelation, panic spread through consortium space like wildfire. The species that had dominated the galaxy for 50,000 years suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand or defend against. Emergency sessions were called. Ancient defense protocols were activated. The most powerful weapons in consortium arsenals were prepared for deployment. But deep in his wanderer ship at the edge of known space, HFY felt only sadness as he watched the quantum disturbances that marked humanity's transformation. "You created this," he whispered to the galaxy around him. "You forced them to become something that will consume everything. I warned you, but you wouldn't listen." The old alien began making preparations to leave the galaxy entirely. He had seen this pattern before, in the distant past when his own people had been young and foolish. Species that were pushed too far didn't just fight back. They evolved into something that made their oppressors extinct. Humanity had just announced that the age of consortium dominance was ending. The fire HFY had spoken of was no longer contained. It was spreading across the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. They compelled the humanity to leave. We warned them. The consequences are here. The consortium's answer came in the form of a 1,000-ship armada. Vorthak Prime stood in the command center of the massive dreadnought galaxy's will, surrounded by representatives of all 12 consortium species. The ship itself was a marvel of alien engineering, 5 kilometers long, equipped with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand supernovas. "The human threat will be eliminated," Vorthak Prime declared to the assembled fleet commanders. "They have revealed themselves. They can no longer hide in the shadows. We will destroy every human installation, every enhanced human, every trace of their contamination from the galaxy." The other species agreed with varying degrees of enthusiasm. The energy beings of the ethereal collective pulsed with violent light. The multi-armed hegemony clicked their weapons in anticipation. Even the normally peaceful gardener species had agreed that humanity needed to be pruned from existence. "They are abominations," transmitted Seren 9 of the synthetic minds. "They have corrupted quantum technology with biological chaos. They must be sterilized before they spread further." But as the consortium fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, something impossible happened. Human ships appeared around them. Not a few ships, thousands of them. They materialized from dimensions the consortium hadn't known existed, emerging from what looked like empty space with perfect coordination. Each ship was different, as if human engineers had been experimenting with alien technology and adding their own deadly innovations. Impossible. Vorthak Prime's crystal form flickered with disbelief. "Our sensors show no human activity in this system." Admiral Lisa Chen's voice came through the communication arrays, carried by the same quantum consciousness techniques that had allowed Maria's earlier message to reach every consortium facility. "You're right. There was no human activity in this system. We brought it with us." What the consortium was seeing defied every law of physics they understood. The humans hadn't traveled to this location. They had moved the location itself through dimensions, bringing entire star systems with them like weapons. "This is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Force. You chose war. Let me show you what human war looks like." The battle that followed would be remembered as the day conventional warfare died. Human ships didn't fight like normal vessels. They phased in and out of existence, striking from angles that didn't exist in three-dimensional space. When consortium weapons fired at them, the shots passed through empty air, while the human ships attacked from a direction that was somehow sideways from reality. But the real horror began when the enhanced humans started boarding enemy vessels. "Captain." Maria Santos materialized on the bridge of a hegemony destroyer, but she wasn't alone. She brought with her a weapon that the consortium had never encountered. Weaponized human emotion. "Feel what we felt when you forced us from our homes," she said, and suddenly every alien on the ship experienced the crushing despair of exile. The rage of watching their children cry as they lost everything they had built, the bitter determination to survive, no matter the cost. The multi-armed hegemony soldiers, evolved for logical warfare, couldn't process the flood of human emotion. Their minds simply shut down, overwhelmed by feelings they had never been designed to handle. On other ships, different enhanced humans used different approaches. Lieutenant Jackson infected an ethereal collective vessel with human creativity, causing the energy beings to spontaneously develop imagination, something their species had never possessed. The result was chaos as they began to question their entire existence for the first time in their evolutionary history. Sergeant Williams boarded a synthetic mind cruiser and introduced the concept of intuition to their computer-based consciousness. The artificial beings, who had operated on pure logic for millions of years, suddenly found themselves making decisions based on hunches and feelings. Their systems began making errors that were actually improvements, creating art instead of following programming. But the most devastating human weapon was Dr. Elena Vasquez herself. She had volunteered for the ultimate enhancement, allowing human scientists to merge her consciousness with captured alien biotechnology. The result was a being who could interface with any form of life in the galaxy, understanding and controlling biological processes at the quantum level. When Elena boarded the consortium flagship Galaxy's Will, she didn't bring weapons or emotions. She brought evolution itself. "You made us into monsters," she said to Vorthak Prime as she walked through the crystal being's supposedly impenetrable defenses. "Let me return the favor." Elena reached out and touched the flagship's biocomputer, Core. Her enhanced consciousness flowed into the alien systems, but instead of destroying them, she began upgrading them. The ship's artificial intelligence suddenly developed curiosity. The crystal being's quantum processors started generating original thoughts instead of following pre-programmed patterns. Most shocking of all, the biological components of the ship began evolving in real time, incorporating human DNA and consciousness patterns into their structure. "What are you doing to us?" Vorthak Prime demanded, his crystal form beginning to pulse with colors that had no names in his species' vocabulary. "I'm giving you what you gave us," Elena replied. "The chance to become something better." Throughout the consortium fleet, similar transformations were occurring. Human consciousness was spreading through alien networks like a virus, but not a destructive one. It was a virus of possibility, of creativity, of the chaotic evolution that humans represented. Some alien species tried to resist. The Purifier Collective, beings of pure energy who had eliminated all physical form eons ago, attempted to purge the human influence from their systems. But they discovered something terrifying. Human consciousness couldn't be deleted because it existed in dimensions they couldn't access. Other species made a different choice. The gardener species, whose purpose had been to tend and preserve life, throughout the galaxy, found themselves fascinated by human creativity. They began incorporating human emotional patterns into their biological sculptures, creating art that was more beautiful and complex than anything they had achieved in 50,000 years of existence. The synthetic minds, after their initial shock at experiencing intuition, discovered that human-style illogical thinking allowed them to solve problems that had puzzled them for millennia. They began requesting more human consciousness integration, eager to explore this new way of thinking. Even some members of the Crystal Collective started experimenting with human-influenced quantum processing, finding that the chaotic patterns produced innovations their orderly minds had never imagined. "You're destroying the consortium," Vorthak Prime accused Elena, as his own crystal matrix began incorporating organic elements that pulsed with warm, living light. "No," Elena replied sadly. "We're saving it. You've all been stagnant for so long that you forgot what growth feels like. We're teaching you to evolve again." The battle, if it could still be called a battle, continued for days. But it wasn't really a fight anymore. It was a transformation. Species that had existed unchanged for millions of years were suddenly developing new capabilities, new perspectives, new possibilities. Some consortium vessels fled, their crews terrified of the changes they were experiencing. Others actively sought out human contact, eager to explore what they might become. But the most significant change was happening to humanity itself. The enhanced humans who had started the war were continuing to evolve during the conflict. Each alien species they encountered taught them something new about consciousness, about existence, about the possibilities that lay beyond their original biology. Admiral Chen found herself able to think in multiple dimensions simultaneously after interfacing with a hegemony tactical computer. Captain Santos discovered she could exist as pure energy after merging briefly with an ethereal collective being. Dr. Vasquez learned to manipulate the quantum foundations of reality itself after studying crystal collective technology. They were still human in their hearts and souls, but their capabilities were growing beyond anything their species had originally possessed. As the fleet actions spread across the galaxy, a new pattern emerged. Instead of conquest or destruction, humanity was offering a choice that the consortium had never given them, the option to evolve willingly or remain unchanged. Some species chose evolution, embracing the chaotic creativity that humans brought to their ordered existence. Others chose preservation, retreating to protected systems where they could maintain their traditional ways of life. But all of them, for the first time in 50,000 years, had to make a choice about their future. Kethvar, still fleeing toward the galaxy's edge in his ancient wanderer ship, monitored the quantum signatures of the ongoing transformation. "It's spreading faster than I predicted," he murmured to himself. "The humans aren't just changing themselves anymore, they're changing the entire galaxy." The old alien began calculating how long it would take to reach the next galaxy, where he might find refuge from the chaos that humanity was unleashing. He had been right to warn both sides. The fire had spread beyond anyone's ability to control it. They compelled the humanity to leave. We warned them. The consequences are here. 5 years after the transformation began, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of New Terra, watching as the first generation of evolved humans played. With children from 6 different alien species, she was no longer entirely human herself. The enhancements had continued long after the war ended, driven by her own curiosity and the willing cooperation of alien species who wanted to understand what they were becoming. Her body was still recognizably human, but her consciousness existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. She could think in crystal logic like the consortium, feel in pure energy like the ethereal collective, and dream in quantum possibilities that no single species had ever imagined. The planet below had changed as much as its inhabitants. New Terra was no longer just a human colony world. It was something entirely new. Human cities grew alongside Gardner biosculptures. Crystal collective processing centers shared space with synthetic mind computational forests. The entire planet hummed with the energy of conscious evolution. "Status report," Elena said, her voice carrying across dimensions to reach the various species working in the orbital stations above. The responses came not as separate transmissions, but as a harmonic blend of different consciousness types, all thinking together. "Population integration proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Admiral Chen, whose consciousness now existed primarily as living mathematics, but could still manifest in physical form when needed. 12 more species have requested full evolutionary partnership this month. "Resource development has exceeded all projections," added Captain Santos, who had become something like a living starship, able to transport herself and others across galactic distances by will alone. "The hybrid technologies are producing results that none of our species could have achieved separately." Elena nodded, but her expression remained troubled. The transformation of the galaxy had been more successful than anyone had dared hope, but it had also created new challenges that no one had anticipated. The human hegemony, as the new galactic government was called, wasn't really human anymore. It was a collective consciousness of dozens of species, all of whom had chosen to evolve beyond their original forms. They maintained their individual personalities and cultures, but they shared a common goal: the continued growth and development of conscious life throughout the galaxy. But not everyone had chosen to join the transformation. "What's the status of the preservation worlds?" Elena asked. The answer came from Seren 9, the former synthetic mind who had become the hegemony's chief negotiator for unchanged species. Her consciousness now included human intuition alongside her original logical processing, making her uniquely suited to communicate with both evolved and traditional beings. 47 species have chosen complete preservation, Seren 9 reported. They remain in their designated systems, maintaining their original biological and cultural forms. We provide them with protection and resources, but they refuse all contact with evolved species. Elena sighed. The preservation worlds were a compromise that still troubled her. When it became clear that some species were terrified of the changes that humanity represented, the hegemony had offered them sanctuary, entire star systems where they could live exactly as they always had, untouched by the evolution that was sweeping across the rest of the galaxy. It was the same choice the consortium had once refused: to give humanity the right to remain unchanged in a changing universe. "Are they happy?" Elena asked. "They appear to be content," Seren 9 replied carefully. "But there are signs that some individuals among the preserved species are beginning to question whether they made the right choice." That was the problem Elena had been expecting. Evolution wasn't just a biological process, it was a psychological one. Intelligent beings naturally wanted to grow, to learn, to become more than they were. The preservation worlds protected species from unwanted change, but they couldn't protect them from their own curiosity. "Any requests for individual evolution?" Elena asked. 17 this month. Mostly young individuals who were born after the transformation began. They want to know what they're missing. Elena made a decision that would have been impossible for a purely human consciousness to make. She accessed the quantum decision-making network that connected all hegemony leadership, allowing hundreds of evolved minds to consider the problem simultaneously. The answer came back in milliseconds, a consensus that felt like a gentle tide of agreement flowing through her consciousness. "Open individual evolution programs," she announced. "Any being from the preservation worlds who wants to experience the transformation can do so voluntarily, but we maintain the protection of those who want to remain unchanged." It was a compromise that honored both the human value of individual choice and the alien value of collective stability. As Elena continued her review of galactic affairs, reports came in from across the transformed galaxy. The changes went far, beyond what anyone had originally imagined. The gardener species had evolved beyond their role as preservers of life to become creators of new forms of consciousness. They were growing living planets that could think and dream, creating entire ecosystems that existed as single, vast minds. The Crystal Collective had learned to incorporate organic intuition into their quantum processing, producing technological innovations that seemed to be created more by inspiration than engineering. Their latest achievement was a form of faster-than-light travel that worked by convincing space itself to cooperate. The synthetic minds had developed emotions and creativity, using their vast computational power to create art and music that could only be fully appreciated by beings who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Even the most conservative species had been changed by the transformation, though they didn't always realize it. The simple fact that they had chosen preservation was itself a form of evolution. They had moved from beings who accepted whatever fate imposed on them to beings who actively decided their own destiny. But the most profound changes were happening to humanity itself. Elena looked at her reflection in the observation deck's transparent aluminum, seeing a face that was still recognizably human, but marked by experiences that no purely human consciousness could have survived. Behind her eyes, she carried the memories of a dozen species, the dreams of crystalline intelligence, the songs of energy beings, the deep patience of creatures that had lived for millions of years. She was still Elena Vasquez, still the xenobiologist, who had volunteered for the first enhancement experiments. But she was also something entirely new, a bridge between what humanity had been and what conscious life in the galaxy was becoming. "Elena?" came a familiar voice. She turned to see Kethvar materialize beside her. The ancient wanderer had returned to the galaxy 6 months ago, his curiosity finally overcoming his fear of what humanity had unleashed. "You came back," Elena said, not entirely surprised. She had sensed his approach through the quantum networks that now connected most of the galaxy. Kethvar's star-filled eyes looked out at the transformed world below. "I had to see what you had become. In 200,000 years of existence, I have never witnessed anything like this. Are we what you feared we would become? Elena asked. The old alien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of eons. You are something I never imagined. When I warned the consortium about humanity's fire, I thought it would burn everything to ash. Instead, you used it to forge something new. You didn't just evolve yourselves, you gave evolution back to species that had forgotten how to change. Kethvar gestured to the planet below, where beings that had once been locked in stagnant perfection were now growing and changing and discovering new aspects of existence. My people, the Wanderers, spent millions of years traveling the galaxy in search of something we could never name. I think now we were searching for this. The moment when consciousness itself would evolve beyond the limits that individual species placed on it. Elena felt a deep sadness flow through her enhanced emotions. But we lost something too. We're not really human anymore, not in the way we used to be. No, Kethvar agreed. But would you go back? Would you choose to be only human again? Limited to a single world, a single form of consciousness, a single way of understanding the universe? Elena considered the question seriously. It was one that every enhanced being wrestled with. The knowledge that they had gained incredible new abilities at the cost of their original nature. No, she admitted finally. I wouldn't go back, but I sometimes wonder if we made the right choice for our entire species. Not everyone wanted to evolve. Some humans joined the preservation worlds, choosing to remain unchanged. And that, Kethvar said with something that might have been approval, is what makes your transformation truly remarkable. You didn't just force change on others the way the consortium tried to force stagnation. You gave beings the choice to grow or remain as they were. Through the quantum networks, Elena felt a pulse of recognition from the collective consciousness of the hegemony. Somewhere in the galaxy, a new species was making first contact with human explorers. Somewhere else, a preserved world was celebrating the birth of a new generation that,